We have this headline every week. It just changes on which number headline it is, but it's Mayweather and McGregor. It's just the story that is living in perpetuity in this sport. And we're going to run a clip from Dana White from the press conference. But before we do that, before I headed out to Buffalo, it was Tuesday of last week. I left Las Vegas and flew to Buffalo on Wednesday. I met up with Dana White in person in Las Vegas, and we discussed a whole bunch of different things, and one of them was this fight. And he had mentioned to me that he was planning on a face-to-face meeting with McGregor in New York at some point after McGregor's child is born next month. He said it just makes sense. He's in Dublin. I'm in Las Vegas. We'll meet in the middle. We will, hammer out the details on our end, and then that will be obviously a big step in towards making this fight. In the meantime, there were some stories that came out. Jeff Mayweather, obviously a member of the Mayweather family. He lives in Las Vegas as well, knows Dana White. Bob Arum, promoter of Top Rank, longtime boxing promoter. Hopefully everybody knows who Bob Arum is. They came out and made some comments about, the UFC is looking for 80% of what Conor's making. Whatever Conor gets from this Floyd Mayweather fight, the UFC is going to take 80% of it. So I wanted to mention that because obviously it seems to be a point of contention for Dana White, who addressed it directly at the press conference. So Michael, if you got that audio, let's go ahead and play it.
What I would like to clarify is all the bullshit about the 80-20 split. Jeff Mayweather, come on, Jeff. Me and Jeff go way back. Jeff, are you the spokesman now for Team Mayweather? And Bob Arum, you piece of you too. What do they know about this fight? You know what they know about this fight? Nothing. Okay? Believe me, we have had preliminary talks with Conor, and I'm in a good place with Conor, and we're gonna meet in New York when he has this baby.
Is September still possible?
I don't know. The thing is the longer it takes, for us to come to an agreement, I think the longer it's going to take to negotiate with the Mayweather team. Because I know all the talk of A side, B side, and all this stuff. Listen, of course, everything that I say is going to come off bias because he's my guy. But you guys judge. Is Conor McGregor not a massive star? And is this not... this fight here, Floyd doesn't make this kind of money either without Conor. So Conor's just as important as Floyd when it comes to this fight.
Would you have...
Not to mention the fact that Conor's actually stepping in and boxing him and not saying, hey, let's fight in mixed martial arts.
Luke, when you're talking about a fight between Mayweather and McGregor, we are dissecting any little comment that gets made about it, trying to find the pieces that mean something. You listen to Dana White's statement. What are the pieces that mean something to you out of that?
Jesus. That it feels like some kind of inevitability that this is going to get made. He's talking about it as not merely that, there's no, that this is not some kind of remote possibility, but rather that the train has left the tracks and that he is party to some of what's happening. It feels like Dana 2007, where he's taking shots at like boxing promoters for, perceived slights or challenges to his company or authority. I don't know. I mean, you might have a different take completely on this one. I don't know that I have a ton to glean from that, other than what I already mentioned, and then lastly, it's hard to get these deals done. I don't buy that Conor McGregor is the A side at all in this one. I know some people do, and they make some fairly decent arguments for it, but it ultimately is the weaker case. And, look, Conor McGregor is trying to be MMA's Floyd Mayweather. And if you look at how he has modeled himself and modeled his career, and even down to how he posts on social media, it is borrowing from Floyd in the most direct way. If for no other reason, he would be the B-side there. But for me, it's just that I don't know that they're going to be able to get this fight done in 2017. That, to me, feels almost like a pipe dream at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's essentially what I took from it as well. Is that, White is saying I don't need Jeff Mayweather and Bob Arum coming out and making these inflammatory statements that are getting picked up by fight blogs that could potentially get Conor McGregor or his side emotional before this even starts. It's difficult. It's going to be difficult to hammer out. It was always going to be difficult to hammer out a deal of this magnitude. And the only saving factor that makes this fight even slightly possible is that there really could be that much money to go around. That is really the only reason that this fight could happen, because if we're talking about even a slightly lower fight that does not generate, the money that we are expecting this fight to, there's no way that a deal could be done. But when you have so much money, it makes negotiating, I guess, it makes it more difficult, but it also makes it easier, and that people can just be happy. They can look at the numbers, they can look at figures and say, okay, I can live with that figure. But yeah, I listen to this and I think, okay, he's got to meet with McGregor. They still have to hammer out some details on their end. Then they have to go to the Mayweather side. There were news reports out not that long ago that said this fight was going to happen in June. And now we're looking at, McGregor saying the fight is close. It could happen in September. Just based on, these comments, I agree with you 100%. 2017, going to be very difficult. And I've asked this question to some other co-hosts on this podcast. You think Conor McGregor is okay sitting out an entire year in the middle of his prime? And are you okay with that? I mean, of course, you would love to see him fight, but what do you think about Conor McGregor taking a year off at this point in his career?
I've been so wrong about Conor so many times that, my prescription for what he should do is, this could be the least relevant thing you've ever asked any guest on this podcast ever. I will nevertheless try, in hindsight, in terms of getting things wrong, so maybe I can get this one right. No, I don't like him sitting out of prime, but I think that if he probably feels like, if there's this, light at the end of the tunnel, if there's this, God, I hate to use the Irish phrase, if this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Oh, man.
Really going there. No, but you know what I mean? If this is going to pay off in some kind of gigantic career-altering way, then it is something that is not only that you could wait for, but you absolutely should wait for. But if I were him, I would have some kind of, I don't know about a drop-dead date, but some kind of idea in mind about when this is no longer worth it, what the financial terms of it would have to be. Because remember, what could be the worst possible scenario? He waits for all this to happen. He waits much longer than he wanted to. He does, let's say, he's going to get paid well no matter what, but maybe it's a little bit less. And then he goes in there, let's say he just gets absolutely obliterated, which is not impossible at all. And then he becomes, I don't think he'll turn into a laughingstock. I think he'll find a way to turn the media narrative in at least a reasonably positive way. But none of those would be awesome. And now you have to go back to MMA, which you haven't been training in, you might be rusty in. By the way, he might still be the champ at that point. All these things are just gambles that will work out provided certain events take place on the schedule or calendar that they are supposed to. The more that gets delayed, the more all the various variables here, the problems associated with them, begin to compound each other. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know what that drop-dead date is for him. I don't know what that looks like. But if I were him, I would have a plan in mind. And at some point, believe it or not, I would have to say, and it may be a while, but at some point you can't wait forever on Floyd. You've got to keep your career moving. I know that's probably not what he doesn't what he want to do, but he might have to.
Yeah, and the last thing on this, and we'll just say it in general, when we look back on McGregor's career, and I know that this is an impossible question to answer, Luke, but do you think that we'll look at him as a guy who fought the best of his era? We don't necessarily look at that as Floyd, or we don't look at it as in the sense of Floyd fought the best of his era at the right times. He definitely picked and chose. And you say that McGregor is trying to be the Floyd of MMA, and it seems like he is well on his way. He has all of the leverage to pick any fight that he wants within his respective sport. Will we look back and say, of course we'll say he was great and that he accomplished things and he changed the face of the game, but will we say that, man, he fought all of the guys that I wanted him to fight? Do you think that'll happen with Conor?
Hard to say, like you mentioned before, but I can see a scenario very, very easily where we don't. He already has, to mention barring from Floyd, he already has this idea, about matchmaking that is antithetical to how UFC had run itself. And he did it for a number of reasons, self-aggrandizement being chief among them. But I've had this debate with folks, what is harder, to jump around and take tough fights, against popular guys? Some of them might be very, very good. Or to have a title and then just accept all comers and see how long you can hold on to it. I personally believe it is significantly harder to hold that title and then just accept number one contender after number one contender. I mean, that's what the UFC was built on, and titles used to change hands with the exception of the incredible reign of George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva all the time. All the time, because when the best fight the best, and you see this in any sport where that happens, where they have, like, let's say, tournament structures, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, that kind of thing, guys lose. Guys lose all the time. It's just inevitable. And, you know, to me, like, Floyd's record of 49-0, I mean, to call it fraudulent would be not fair. But to call that, like, you know, some kind of obvious example of how much greater he is than everyone because he can defy the conventions of human behavior would also not be true either. Like, he, as you mentioned, you know, the Valdemir fight was tough, but he didn't fight a prime Cotto. He didn't fight, just go down the list. There's lots of guys he didn't fight in their primes. And so, to me, we'll have to see if he goes back. Does he fight Nurmagomedov? Does he fight Ferguson? Does he fight Diaz again? Does he win or does he lose? Those questions will help clarify this answer. But if he keeps doing what he has been doing and jumps around, his star power will be incredible, and they'll say a lot of nice things about him. That Eddie Alvarez win is pretty damn spectacular. But I don't think, personally, that you reserve the same kind of sporting judgment greatness for someone who did not defend a title, who has yet to defend a title, and has had two of them.
Yeah, it's so premature to talk about this, but I mean that's what we do on podcasts and radio shows, right? I mean we discuss we discuss speculative things. It will be so disappointing if that is the case, because I do look at Conor McGregor as an amazing talent, and I don't think that we've seen, you know, the peak of that talent by any means, you know, and I think that he hasn't been in. Well, I guess that there are fights out there that would push that talent, you know, just as the Diaz rematch did, and he stepped up to the plate and he was remarkable in that fight. I think that there are other fights out there, of course, and they're obvious ones that would push his talent to another level, and I hope that we get to see that, because that's what's great about combat sports is when you have an amazing talent and it reaches its full potential when it's pushed, you know, in a violent environment of a fight, you know, and we've seen that in McGregor in the Diaz rematch, and I would love to see it again. So hopefully it happens. All right.